The next two cards are cards that I received. This is one from a long time ago. It doesn't have my call on it because this is from a station in Manchuria. And I did work this station, but I didn't get the card. And so it was a ham, this W6ALQ in Ennis, Montana. And when he passed away, all these cards were out in his backyard barn. And the sheriff was going to throw all of that stuff out. Well, I couldn't stand it because I never got the card. So it's on my wall, and I don't think he cared. Then moving ahead, this is one of the latest contacts I've made, and this is on 160 meters. This is in Laos, and there was a friend of mine that went there. He lives in Thailand, but he goes to Laos once in a while. And it turned out I was the only contact in North America for this guy. And it was mainly due to some really good receiving antennas. So I could hear him, and nobody else could hear him. Nobody else called him. And yet I made that. So those two cards are kind of to show the beginning and ending of part of my ham career. I started out about age 12, maybe it was a little before, maybe it was a little after, I'm not sure. But I had a shortwave listener card, and I'd listen to CW stations, and that's how I learned the code. I'd sit there until I could figure out the difference between a V and an H, and I went on to learn the code. And I guess we all have certain talents. I think mine were radio code and typing, which came in really handy later because I was in the Navy later, and I needed that. And I was 26 lessons ahead of everybody in the school for typing, so that helped out a lot. This is the thing that got me started. There are a lot of turning points in all of our lives, and this was one in mine. And this is what really got me started. That little radio on the cover there is one that I made, and it's you wound the coil on an oatmeal box, had a couple of batteries. You made the tuning condenser. It was a condenser then, not a capacitor. And you slide that back and forth, and then there were other parts that you just made yourself. And I didn't know you needed short wires, so one day I pulled the wire way out away from the tuning capacitor, and that's when I heard a ham on 160. And I learned that there was such thing as hams in the world. Here's a drawing of how you build that thing, and it's got those parts that are illustrated there. And there's a schematic of it, and sort of how you lay it out. So you wound things on spools, and it was pretty haywire, but it worked. That was my call in California. My first ham license was in California. This was the first call that I had. And here's a card W6 PBI, and you can see the other one of mine was PBB. We both took our exams in San Francisco in 1937, the same day. And we didn't meet up again until later when I went to the ham convention in Visalia, California. It's near Fresno. And so we became good friends and got to know each other. So one thing about ham radio is making friends. That's one of the most important things to me. And I have radio friends all over the world, so Bob is a pretty common name. Ham radio. This is when I was at my first station. I was in California. And by that time I had a 3-tube receiver that I made. And there's my first transmitter. It had a 211 tube in the final. It had crystal control. Had primary keying, so you had the 110 on your key. My folks weren't too well off, and so I had to buy all my own stuff. And so I worked in a grocery store for $2 a day, and so I saved up $50 and bought that transmitter. It was made by Hammond in Southern California. So that's probably what I used to work at the station in Manchuria in 1938. I just had a wire for an antenna that was up on the roof. This was another, it's probably hard to see, but this is where I copied Sputnik, the first one that orbited Earth. And I had all the times and what it sounded like, and so I copied that. And there's the Naval Reserve unit that I was in. I'm way in the back row. It doesn't matter, but I was right to the left of where that vertical pointer thing is. And then there's one guy down in the lower left-hand corner, W6MZQ, and he and I are the only survivors out of that whole group. And I have a schedule with him every week on 20-meter sideband. He and I were both in high school together, so we're still keeping in touch by doing that. And early in 1941, before World War II began, I got called up by the Navy to operate their radio station in San Francisco. I wasn't the only operator, there were other operators. But I was good at code and I was good at typing, so that's all it took. I was trained enough that I could start right in. Sometimes I'd have 180 messages in one day, one shift, and I didn't make any mistakes. A lot of the messages were 5-letter code groups, and I can't do that well today, but I did pretty well in those days. Now, the next thing that happened is, since I was good at code, they sent me to the radio school near Seattle that taught the Japanese radio code. And this is an actual copy of what I copied during that time. And you can see that there's all these characters. They're called katakana characters. There's 46 of them. So let me go back. You start from the right-hand corner and go down, and you move to the left and go down again. And so you have to know all these 46 characters. And, you know, in our code, there's 26 in our alphabet, only have 46 in this. So you either have to learn these symbols to write them down, or else you have a special typewriter that where you use the shift key to get the 46 characters. And so a little bit later I'll show you where we were on the Farallon Islands and copied that. And I copied that before the Battle of Midway and during the Battle of Midway. I was in the Navy 5 years, but I hardly ever saw a ship to except get to the Farallon Islands. That was 30 miles off of San Francisco. But I did a lot of radio intelligence work. If you have any questions as I go on, that's fine too. Here's a kind of an aerial view of the Farallon Islands. It's really an interesting place. It's kind of a bird sanctuary these days. It's hard to get on there. But it was kind of neat for us in the Navy because Well, first we learned to drink that coffee that they boil all day. The other thing is, we could look at the killer whales go by, and they would be chomping on the sea lions out there. And the other good thing was tidal pools full of abalone, so we could get abalone without getting our feet wet. That was pretty good. I had an article in the Chronicle, and this is a picture from that, and it's kind of related to copying the Japanese code. And I started out as a radioman 3rd class, and I got up to radioman 1st class. That's when I was in the Navy. That's when I was a little bit younger. And here's loading stuff to get onto the Farallon Islands. We needed all those drums for diesel and gasoline and water and things like that. And here, you had to get in a little boat after you got off of a big ship. And then the crane would come down with a platform, and you'd get onto that, and then they'd haul you up to the island. And that was an aerial view. Towards the top is that round building. And that's the silo where we had the direction finding equipment. There's a picture of it. We had a ham receiver, National HRO was our receiver, and we had an Adcock antenna in there. And we could direction find on the Japanese ships to about 1 degree, and then we could copy all those ships too. And that's what we did there. It was one of the really important things, I think, in the Navy. Of course, there were a lot of bad battles and a lot of other things besides radio code, but this whole story that I'm going to pass out is about doing all this, and it really helped Admiral Nimitz, because there was kind of a conflict, I guess, like there usually is, between Washington and California and Hawaii, and the admirals back east thought the Japanese would show up late in June. Well, it turns out that the guys that broke the code, they figured it was going to be early in June. Well, it was important for the Americans to get there soon and get ready, because we only had a handful of ships, and the Japanese, I think, had 140 ships. Well, they kind of followed up, and they didn't put all their ships there. They sent some to Adak, and they held some back, and so on. And there were many other things besides code that helped, but the code helped a lot. And so it helped the Americans to win that battle, which is really a turning point in the war.
Quick interruption, somebody's dark SUV, 6 Charlie tags, left the door open.
Dark blue SUV?
It's parked along the fence here by the sidewalk, by the road.
That could be some of the guys coming back.
It's been there quite a while.
Oh, has it? With the door open?
Yeah.
Well, that'll be all right then.
They're doing a battery.
I know that's
Well, after the Farallones, I had a lot of radio intelligence work to do, and this picture comes later. But I was sent to Northern California, to near Point Reyes, it's up near Napa, and it's another radio intelligence thing. We copy the Japanese transmissions from Japan, and they would send them by voice to wherever their allies were, like South America or some in Europe. And it was really easy to copy. It was scrambled, but all they did was invert the different bands, and so it was really easy to break it. And then we'd send that to the State Department. And then the next thing, they sent me to an Army communication base, and then I taught the Army guys about radio intelligence, and that was kind of a fun time. I was a young guy there, so I had to sleep in the fire hall because there wasn't any bunks anywhere else. I got about 2 hours sleep a night, and then I worked on this radio business all night. And then in the evening, I'd go to the USO parties. In the day, I'd work in a grain belt to have something to do. So when you're young, it helps. Then later on, these fellows show up because I got selected to go to Caltech to get a degree so I could become a naval officer. And they only picked 2 people out of the whole 12th Naval District, and I happened to be one of the 2. So I was then at Caltech, and these guys were some of my roommates. And these are a little bit scattered. This is an old town in Inverness, California. It's up just north of San Francisco. And there's 1 bar, 1 post office, and 1 grocery store. And then the house that we rented to live in. Then we go out to the AT&T station. They had acres of rhombics out there, so you could hear anything. Then later on, I went to midshipman school, and this is in Notre Dame. We had to march in the football parade, and that was part of our duty there. There, that's me on the right, and the wise guy. Oh, and while at Caltech, we had some time off, so we'd go on camping trips up in the Sierras, and these are some of the guys that went with me. You have to have a radio every place you go. I took a radio along on this trip. And here, this letter is hard to read probably, but that was one of the turning points in my life. It was from Simon Ramo, and he was forming used aircraft. And they had 3 engineers in Hughes Aircraft. I would have been the 4th engineer if I accepted this letter. Well, I turned it down because I didn't want to live in Los Angeles, and I wanted to get back to my family near San Francisco. So that made a big difference in my life. And then here's the next one that made a big difference. After I came back from the Navy, I worked for the CIA, which is now the FAA, and I worked at near Half Moon Bay, their receiving station. They had 400 acres of antennas there, and they had big rhombics and 1,200-foot V-beams and things like that. Well, then from that I went to their transmitting station near San Francisco, and it was pretty dull. You know, they'd come in the morning and read the paper and make coffee and dust off the transmitters, and for a young guy it was not very exciting. So when they saw this ad in QST, this ad wanted hams to go on this expedition to British East Africa. Well, so again I lucked out. I was picked out to go on that. And well, I'll tell you more about it later, but to get to the expedition, I went by train from San Francisco to New York, and then went on a ship to get to Africa. These are a few pictures about the expedition. It's a long story. We were there about 6 months, and we did an awful lot. I've got a handout here which has some links to the website, and there's a friend of mine in Holland, PA0ABM, and he's put a lot of the African stuff on a website. Because there were 2 of us were the operators on this expedition. We got along fine, but we never could agree on writing. I was an engineer, and so I wrote with one style, and he was not an engineer, so his were probably more interesting. Anyway, there's about 200 pages about this on the website, so I've got a link in this handout where if you want to, you can look at some of that. Gaddy was the leader. He's was from Italy. He'd been on a lot of expeditions. He was really hard to get along with. I get along with most people, but I think he was the worst one I ever had. And here we're stuck in the middle of Africa. His wife lived on gin the whole time. And there was this, we went on a freighter, we left New York, and it took 48 days to get to Mombasa.
Wow.
It was just like a lake, you know, we really lucked out. There was no waves or anything, so. And then, well, it's a long story, because we stopped at Cape Town, and then went up to Table Mountain, and we saw the Dutch colony there. Then we stopped at Durban and Port Elizabeth, and then we went to Zanzibar and stopped there. This is kind of an important picture. It shows where we went in Africa. Maybe I ought to go up there and point it out.
Bob, sit down.
Why
And
don't you
use your mouse pointer and just move the mouse pointer up onto the map.
Okay,
And that works for you.
let's try that. See,
Try it, see how it works.
like there?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, yeah, there you go. There's Mombasa, that's where we landed in Africa, and that was after we'd been at Zanzibar. And so we unloaded all the equipment, and then we went up here through this little town, and we camped near Kilimanjaro, and we camped there quite a while. And some of us had the option, or we were selected to go to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, so we did that. And it took about 5 days to do that. It's not a mountain climbing thing, it's a hike, but it was really interesting. It's about almost 20,000 feet elevation, so some of the guys couldn't stand it. Most of us just got a bad headache from it, but no real problem. And then we went to Arusha. There's a picture of kind of a farmer's market there, and we got some of our supplies there. And then we went to this, if you've seen any of the nature programs on TV, you've probably seen this Ngorongoro crater. It's a big crater and with a big ridge of mountains around it, and down inside are all kinds of animals, and just thousands of them. And so that was a great experience. And then we went out into the Serengeti Plain. We were there a long time, and you could see the lions sleeping under these big trees as you drive along, and there were zebra and giraffe and all sorts of animals there. The purpose of the expedition was mainly commercial. Gaddy wanted to take pictures and write stories and sell books and things like that. From the ham standpoint, it was great because we could operate and work the world. And I've got in the handout a list of some of the rare countries that we worked from there.
Did you do business type communications too for the expedition, like reporting back to corporate, or what was the nature of your communications?
That's a really good question. That's what Gaddy wanted to do. Well, hams aren't supposed to be doing that. And in fact, it got so bad that we wrote a letter to Gaddy and said, hams don't do that sort of thing. And the consequence was the other operator got fired, and I guess I was the lesser of two evils, so he had the contract to keep this thing going, so he needed one operator anyway. And it was kind of interesting how we fooled him or changed it. Those were the days when you had two knobs on your receiver. One was band spread and one was band set. Well, if you set those wrong, then the other dial was all wrong. And so that's what we do when we say, gee, we can't hear Chicago, Mr. Gaddy. The conditions are really bad, you know. So, that's what we did. And Bill was a big photographer, and so he met up with Arch Obler, who was taking pictures all over Africa. So he got a job going there, and so he continued on with that work. Well, then Getty had a contract that he had to have somebody operate from Uganda. So, the newspaper reporter, he was from New York, and I were the two selected to go to Uganda. So we put all our equipment in a pickup truck and had all the trailer behind it with big gasoline drums and headed off for Uganda. So we went along this route here and one of these, I guess it was this upper one, and up here and over there. And there, it's called the Mountains of the Moon. It's right on the edge of the Belgian Congo, which is some other country now, right here, I guess. But that's where we operated from Uganda. But we had all kinds of problems getting to Uganda. We had so much weight in the back of this trailer that one time we had 2 rear tires blow out at the same time. Well, I'd never done any mechanical work, but this was a way to learn or begin. So we had to first jack up the rear axle